update following the advisory from the Met Office and the National Disaster Management Agency. All pedestrians and motorists, you've been asked to exercise extreme caution on the roads in light of the rainfall, the excessive rainfall that we've been experiencing, which has been causing flash floods and landslides in some areas. This morning, I'm joined by Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon, Minister for National Security, Information, Disaster Management, Infrastructure and Physical Development and Public Utilities, Honorable Andy Williams, Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, Dr. Terence Walters, National Disaster Coordinator at the National Disaster Management Agency. We're also joined
Recording
by
in progress.
CTO, Mr. Kevin Blash, Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Infrastructure, and Mr. Terence Smith, the Acting General Manager of NAWASA. This morning we want to hear from NAWASA first with an update on our dams and the water situation in Grenada. Mr. Smith.
Good morning, everyone. Over the last 10 days, NAWASA's water production systems, primarily on mainland Grenada, and I refer here to our dams, intakes, raw water lines, distribution lines, and water treatment plants, have been severely negatively impacted by 4 distinct periods of extreme rainfall. We all know weekend before last, Friday into Saturday, and then Tuesday of last week, and then Sunday, and then last night into early morning today. At our Mirabo water treatment plant, we have recorded a total of 405 millimeters of rain. That's 16 inches of rainfall falling over the last 10 days. That is an extreme rainfall or a series of extreme rainfall events. So we had 14 of our 28 surface water systems were adversely impacted at the first extreme rainfall event prior Friday into Saturday. And the impact on our ability to provide drinking water is worse. It's about 60% worse than the damage that we sustained in Hurricane Beryl. We're still doing damage assessment, but we've done a preliminary projection based on the assessment that we did following Hurricane Beryl, in which about 7 or 8 of our plants were seriously impacted. This time it's 14 out of 28. And we project damage, the cost of the damage, to be of the order of over $800,000. So that is just a preliminary projection. We still need to do some more detailed damage assessment and estimates, but that's just at a preliminary level. We have spent, in some instances, $20,000 plus, $30,000 plus, in one instance, $40,000 plus, in clearing dams post-Beryl. And over the last 10 days, we have had these dams repeatedly blocked. It is horrendous what we are attempting to achieve. Let me take the opportunity early to acknowledge the sterling contribution that is being made by NAWASA's workers, our staff, our managers, supervisors, engineers, technicians in the field. Have been working steadfastly to restore, initially to do the necessary damage assessment and to restore our systems. In addition to blocked dams through landslides, fallen trees, and of course soil erosion from the extreme rainfall event, we also have a large number of broken lines in our transmission and distribution systems. These tend to be mainly in the parishes of Sedgwick. A significant number of broken lines, largely through landslides and in some instances fallen trees. We have one instance in which I think it's about 8 lengths of 6-inch raw water line have just been washed away. So that is kind of the big picture for over the last 10 days. As at 9:30 a.m. today, November 19th, I can report that 15 of our systems are still impacted. So largely as a result of the rain from Sunday, but more so the rain. I can report that at the Maribor Water Treatment Plant, for the rains last night, or well, early this morning, we recorded 126.2 millimeters of rain. That is 5 inches of rain in a couple of hours. That is an extreme rainfall event. So as of 9:30 a.m. this morning, 15 of our systems are still impacted, of which dams are blocked in 9 systems, and 4 of these 15, 4 systems are projected to be recommissioned, reinstated by the end of today, Tuesday 19th. And for 10 systems, which we're working on now, we cannot give a projection as to when service would be restored, because in most instances, we have not been able to reach the dams as yet because the river stages are still too high. It's dangerous for our workers to go out there. So it's still a work in progress. As we've been doing over the last 2 weeks, when we have further technical updates, one or other of my engineering colleagues, together with our comms unit, will be preparing press releases and various forms of information packages, and we would be publicizing these over the traditional as well as social media. I pause here now.
We'll pause for some questions from our journalists. We have 3 journalists online. If you have questions for Nawasa, you may pose them at this time. Don't see any hands at the moment. So we'll now move to NADMA, Dr. Terence Walters from the National Disaster Coordinator. We'll now take your statements at this time.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. The Meteorological Office at the Morris Bishop International Airport has advised NADMA that a low-level trough in the vicinity of the Windward Islands is producing moderate to heavy showers and isolated thunderstorms like we experienced overnight. Moisture and instability associated with the surface trough will continue to affect the island chain. Consequently, a flood and a landslide warning has been issued for the state of Grenada. Now, if conditions persist, more flooding and landslides are expected. So because of that low-level trough, if the conditions persist and we have more rains, we can anticipate more flooding and more landslides. So additional rainfall is expected over the next few days. Again, so let's repeat that. Additional rainfall is expected over the next few days. As a result of the rainfall experienced overnight, all schools are closed today, Tuesday, November 19. Again, all schools are closed today. That's Tuesday, November 19. There are reports of landslides and flooding, fallen trees in several areas across the country. So we have those reports, and teams are out, at this time conducting the cleanup. I want to remind everyone that we are still in the hurricane season. The season ends officially on the 30th of November. We can expect more rainfall and we can expect wet conditions to continue. November is normally the wettest month, so we can or we should expect more rainfall. We live in a multi-hazard environment where we can expect we should expect more than one hazard to occur at the same time. We've had flooding, landslides, and again, there are other hazards that can occur at the same time. So in a multi-hazard environment, we have to be prepared for that. So we urge residents to be prepared at all times for these hazards. Pay attention to the information from the Met Office and from NADMA and from other entities that will issue information at this time. In terms of road users, we ask you to be very careful on the roads because we know we have landslides, debris in certain areas. We ask you to please be careful on the roads. Importantly, do not cross flooded areas, neither in your vehicle or on foot. I want to emphasize, do not cross flooded areas, neither in your vehicle nor on foot. We see people attempting that from time to time, but we urge against trying to cross flooded areas. Ensure that you store additional water, both drinking water, and water for domestic use. We do understand that Nawasa is challenged, but the crews are working hard to restore the system. The Meteorological Office and NADMA will continue to monitor the situation and provide timely updates. And citizens are urged to be vigilant, monitor the weather conditions, pay attention to the information that we are going to issue from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walters. We now will hear from Mr. Kevin Blash, the Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Infrastructure.
The Ministry of Infrastructure would have started our initial response to the heavy rains that we would have experienced from the 8th into the 9th of November, which was roughly 10 days ago, as Mr. Smith would have highlighted. Our initial response was concentrated to the north of the island in St. Mark and St. John. And then as the rains progressed, it would have continued in parishes such as St. George's and St. David's. To date, we have responded to between 45 to 50 landslides, combined with fallen trees and so on as well. And we project that that number would increase given the current climatic conditions. It is important to note that as the rains continue as they are projected to, we are likely to experience more landslides. And as such, persons are to be vigilant when traversing the nation's roads, as well as when in hilly terrain as well. Over the last 10 days, we have engaged in excess of 20 heavy equipment operators, and we will continue to ramp up our response and respond to all of the slides as fast as we can. Thank you.
At this time, we want to move to the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation. And we're going to hear from our Minister for MIT, Honorable Andrew Dickon.
Pleasant good morning to all. Let me start by saying that our ministry has been aware of the amount of slides, block drains, fallen trees. We have seen people posted them on the media and even on radio programs speaking about them. And what we have done, we have put together a mechanism so that folks or the public can report on them and we can know exactly the status. And by doing so, we can be able to act immediately when we get that information. So we have some numbers that you can call into MIT and report your landslide, fallen trees, even block drains, because as Mr. Terence Walters said that we are still in the rainy season and we expect rain to continue. So it's for the public. If you want to report any slides or block drains, fallen trees, etc., you can do so at or contact our ministry on the number 449-6183 and 417-7091. Let me just repeat that. 449-6183 and 417-7091. So wherever you are, you can call this number and report on the various slides or areas that were affected. In addition, on the weekend, once the weather cools up, we want to do a national cleanup where again we can engage bodies like Solid Waste Authority with the Ministry of Infrastructure. NADMA will be involved, and we can nationally come out Saturday and Sunday and clean up some of the areas around. In doing so, we can unblock some of after this press conference so that members of the public can know exactly what was. But as it is now, we know that several areas have been affected, and we will be here to define these areas. So, once again, to report any slide, any block drains, any block river, fallen trees, you can contact the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation at 449-6183 and 417-7091. And also, there will be a national cleanup this weekend. Contact the same numbers if you want any assistance in your area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We seem to be having some technical difficulties with the audio. So if we can take a quick break and we'll get back in a few minutes to resume our press conference.
Grenada Duty Free and GBN, we are partnering for this Christmas season. Folks, it's going to be a bumper one. We can actually start feeling the energy, the vibe is start building, the promotions that start coming in, and the fragrances, the chocolate. We have up 15%, 20%, 40%. It's going to be a crazy one. We are looking forward to seeing you. We are ready to treat you guys special. We are ready to give back to you after this whole year of, being with us and everything and the support. So with our partnership with GBN, it's going to be a bumper season. Looking forward to seeing you guys.
Proud sponsors of Christmas with GBN includes Ace Hardware, Hubbard's, Flow, Duty Free Caribbean, and I'm Supportings.
I'm Kenroy Batiste from GBN News. Season's greetings, everyone. Wishing you the very best for the holiday season. Spend time with each other, be good to each other, and celebrate each other. Looking ahead to 2025, my wish is for love, joy, and peace to reign in your life. Go forth, do more, and be more. You are loved.
Looking to take your business to new heights? Advertise with GBN on our social media platforms and get noticed by our 138,000 plus followers. Reach a massive engaged audience ready to connect with your brand. No matter your business size, GBN is here to help you grow. Contact us today at admin@gbn.gd or WhatsApp 407-8458 to get started.
Earlier we were having some technical difficulties, and we do apologize for the technical difficulties, but I want to thank you all 600 plus for joining us and for staying with us, and thank you for your patience at this time. I know we were not hearing our CTO very clearly, so we're going to go back to the CTO, Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Infrastructure, Mr. Kevin Blash.
Good morning again, everyone. Apologies for our technical difficulties here at the conference room. So essentially, our response to the heavy rains would have commenced around the 8th or 9th of November. To date, we have been engaged heavily in our various districts with cleaning up in excess of 50 slides. As time progresses, and as the weather is expected to continue, we foresee that this number is likely to increase. As the day progresses and the moments tick on, we are continuing to receive reports of slides in various areas that we were not able to get to so far. I would also like to take this opportunity to commend our road officers in the ministry for the efforts that they have been putting out in the last 10 days or so. They have been working tirelessly, some of them around the clock, to respond to all of the instances that we have experienced, and it has indeed been commendable. We also want to say thanks to their families for the support that they've given to them and their understanding. You know, when everyone is heading home, the officers are heading out to deal with all of the slides. To date, we have also engaged in excess of 20 heavy machine operators around the island. And we would continue to work with all of our stakeholders to ensure that the cleanup is done as rapidly as possible. Once the weather would clear and hold a bit, we expect to be out in the various districts assessing all of the areas that would have experienced landslides to see how we can best address all of the situations as the type of destruction and damage we've experienced varies from place to place depending on the soil type in the area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blash. Thank you for your updates. And we did get a report earlier that there are about 29 slides in St. David alone. So residents of in the St. David area, please be cautious. And again, if you don't have to be on the road, please try to avoid being on the road because we want the machinery and the heavy equipment to get the work done in a timely manner. So thank you again, CTO. We now move to the Minister of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, the Honorable Andy Williams.
Good morning to everyone. Let me just start by saying that the Ministry of MIT would have heard and seen the amount of slides, fallen trees, block drains, etc. And we have set up a mechanism for the public to report and to give information on the above. Hence, in the event you want to report any of the slides, fallen trees, block drains, block rivers, etc., you can do so by calling the telephone number 449-6183. Again, 449-6183. Or you can WhatsApp 417-7091. You can WhatsApp 417-7091. And that is to report, again, any slides, fallen trees, block drains, etc., so that we can try our best to assist where possible. Also, I want to notify the public that this weekend we will be having a national cleanup. And again, if you are interested and you want to assist in your community, you can call the number 449-6183 and WhatsApp 417-7091. And what we can do, we will, well, this initiative is being done in collaboration with the Ministry of Infrastructure, Solid Waste Grenada, NADMA, and by calling, we will contact you and see what we can do to help in the efforts with regards to the cleanup. So we encourage everyone to come out because we are still in the rainy season, and the idea is to try to unblock some of the drains, etc., and to get rid of some of the garbage that may block against some of our water flow that we are experiencing now. And if we do so, we can better equip ourselves for more rains that we forecast to come. So this is an effort where we would like everyone to come forward and assist in whatever way that they can. We are in this together, and together, again, we will see what we can do as a people to deal with this situation that we are faced with, again, by Mother Nature. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Williams, for your updates. Again, the numbers to call, 449-6983 or 417-7091. If you want to report a slide or any flooding in your area that you think the Ministry of MIT can help with, you can call us on 449-6983. 6183. Sorry, the number is 449-6183 and 417-7091. Thank you. We now like to hear from the Minister for Infrastructure, Public Utilities, National Security, Disaster Management and Information, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Press Secretary, and good afternoon to the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique. I say good afternoon, but it has not been good for the last 10 days or so for us in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique because of the climatic challenges that we are facing. I first, however, want to start by expressing on my own behalf, on behalf of the government and the people of Grenada, our profound condolences to the family, friends, and relatives of Mrs. Trinella Frank Purcell, in particular to her father, Raymond Frank, her husband, Kenji Purcell, and the child of Mrs. Trinella Frank Purcell. I also extend condolences and sympathy to the staff, management, and students of the Grace Lutheran School where Mrs. Purcell taught, and the staff of Glenegg where her husband works. As you may be aware, it was a very painful experience to learn of the news that Mrs. Purcell regrettably died when she attempted to make her way to collect her child from school in light of the significant flash flooding and excess rainfall that we were experiencing. This is obviously a very painful time for her family, her husband, her child, her father, those who know her, and we ask you to sincerely remember her in your prayers and in your thoughts, and for those who are close to the family, to continue supporting them in every way we can. This episode is a painful one, and it reminds us of the significant challenge we face as a nation arising from climate change. Grenada Carriacou, Petite Martinique has faced in the last 11 months the quadruple threat of a drought that lasted for the better part of the first 6 months of the year, that led to us imposing water restrictions. We then had the major disaster of Hurricane Beryl right at the commencement of the traditional rainy season. We now have the calamity of excess rainfall, agitated seas. We have to appreciate that the drought would have in many instances significantly impacted the vegetation in Grenada. This has been made 2 times worse by the enormous destruction to the agricultural sector, and by extension our forests and farming sector, which has made our hillsides and our mountains highly vulnerable to excess rainfall. And compounded by agitated seas and high tides, it means that in our low-lying areas, when we have the kind of excess rainfall that we've had over the last 10 days, we will have significant flooding. The effect of this has been significant damage, and it has left many parts of the country vulnerable. Our roads have been impacted, our bridges have been impacted, our sea defenses have been impacted, schools, government facilities, businesses. You heard from Mr. Terence Smith, the General Manager of NAWASA, of the significant damage to NAWASA's infrastructure, and he's made it clear that the damage is in fact more significant than the damage from Hurricane Beryl. While we have not had major reports of damage to the power lines, we still have significant risk to electricity arising from the slides, and in many instances we have not been able to clear the slides as quickly as we would wish because there is still significant danger from continued sliding of the soil and from trees falling on the power lines. And so in some instances we have to await Grenelec giving the all clear and having the trees themselves cut first before we can move to clear the landslides. The Met Office has indicated that we are likely to continue to see rainfall throughout the week, including on the weekend. So it is incumbent on all of us to put our safety first. We have to ensure that if we do not need to be on the road, that we don't go on the road. We have to ensure that if we do not need to be in flood-prone or low-lying areas, that we are not there. In some instances, homes have been completely destroyed as a result of the landslides, or in many instances completely compromised. There has been significant flooding of businesses in particular places like Grenville and St. David, and homes and national infrastructure assets such as right where we are here at the Ministerial Complex and at the National Stadium and in the River Road area. There are significant landslides on some of the main roads, the Western Main Road and parts of St. David. So we are not yet out of the woods. If the weather pattern continues, we expect more damage, and therefore we really do want to urge all our citizens to exercise caution. This is a live and ongoing situation, and so the government will continue to monitor it and put out the necessary advisories and to take actions that may be necessary in the circumstances. So we cannot at this stage say to you, for instance, whether there will be school tomorrow or not. or whether we may have even further restrictions on access to the roadways, because that actually is largely in the hands of God and the weather. So we'll continue to monitor the situation and provide updates as best as we can. The government obviously is clearly aware of the significant cost, damage, and inconvenience that this has caused and will continue to cause. And in addition to the ongoing cleanup efforts being undertaken by the Ministry of Infrastructure and the various contractors and cleaning crews and road officers, as well as the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation, we are also going to have to provide things like housing assistance, clothing, food to families that have been impacted by the flooding. We are going to have to provide assistance in helping people to clean up their homes and so on. And in some instances, we are going to have to, in fact, rebuild or build or move persons out of the areas in which they are living because of the risk that have now developed from some of the landslides. There are some places, for example, like Voley in St. David, where the landslide is significant, and the homes which are close by run the risk of any further significant water damage of some of these homes being compromised. This will run the government and the people of Grenada, the taxpayers of Grenada, into millions of dollars. And so I want to emphasize that many criticize the government for being prudent by suspending and invoking the debt repayment clause so that we could have the necessary liquidity to deal with those situations. In fact, I was criticized by what I was told were eminent economists. I made the point of saying we could not predict the future. We are still very much in hurricane season, and in addition to that, our weather pattern becomes more and more erratic every year because of the impacts of climate change. And so, as a government, we will do everything to ensure that we have the fiscal space to be able to respond to the various challenges that we face. This is coming at enormous financial consequences to the taxpayers of this country. We are going to have to spend enormous sums of money fixing the roads, addressing the bridges, doing both river and sea defenses. And therefore, we have to appreciate that when we talk about climate change, when we talk about the fact that we are a living lab on the front line of climate change, in the last 11 months, this is exactly living proof of this. And so we do have to advocate, we do have to seek the partnership, we do have to go and make sure that the voice of Grenada is heard at COP and at every possible multilateral international fora, so that those who've placed us in this position understand that lives are at stake, livelihoods are at stake, and frankly, our very way of life is at stake. And so, for all our citizens, I want us to appreciate that we do not have control over the weather. But we have to build our resilience, we have to become more adaptable, and we have to stop engaging in some of the practices that are exacerbating and contributing to the challenge we face. Development cannot come at any cost. And many of us are building in areas where we simply should not be building, where it is very risky to ourselves, our families, and in the end, when the landslides come or when the flooding comes, it is still the taxpayers who have to provide assistance to you. So we also have to take responsibility for some of what is happening and to make sure that as we go forward from a national perspective, via the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Ministry of Housing, Social and Community Development, via the Physical Planning and Development Authority, that we start respecting our environment and respecting the laws of nature a lot more, so that we could actually minimize risk and damage and loss to ourselves. So through the Ministry of Economic Development and Finance, as well as Social, Housing and Community Development, we will be seeking Cabinet's approval to provide further financial assistance, for example, to our farmers who've been severely impacted by the flooding, to households that have been significantly impacted by the flooding, and to businesses who've also been significantly impacted by the flooding. At this stage, we are not in a position to give precise details of this because we are still assessing the extent and the level of the damage and the potential continuing threat that we face. The reality, though, is we would appreciate that almost, particularly on the East Coast, almost every bridge is choked and overflowing. And therefore, from a medium to long-term perspective, we are going to have to relook the construction of all of these bridges to make sure that, in fact, they can allow the water to pass without the repeated flooding that we are experiencing. It is also noteworthy that in many instances, significant debris, a lot of bamboo, a lot of cut and fallen trees are coming down the river, in some cases enormous quantities of this. You only need to look at the Lacalome area in St. David to see the enormous amount of bamboo that has come down. And a lot of this comes from the construction industry, where people cut bamboo and simply leave it next to the river or dump it in the river after they finish the construction. Again, those are some of the practices that we really need to address in order to be able to better equip ourselves with responding to this. But I want to emphasize that the island is very vulnerable. We've lost significant vegetative cover as a result of the drought and the hurricane in the mountains, in the hillside. And oftentimes, in the low-lying area, you may not be experiencing rainfall. And within half an hour, there's flooding because there is a deluge of rain in the mountain or the hillside. So we have to be vigilant. We have to take the warnings from the Meteorological Office or from NADMA seriously, and we need to act accordingly to make sure that we can safeguard lives and livelihoods. I want to take the opportunity to thank all of our volunteers, all of the cleanup crews, all of the citizens who have been reporting the slides or sending videos of them. We welcome them, we appreciate them, but we also ask for your patience and for your understanding. We will get to all of you. This is a national effort. In some cases, the more remote you are, the longer obviously it will take. The smaller or narrower the road, the more we'll have to find the appropriate equipment to get there or to get to you. So we please ask for your guidance. We ask for you to report the slides, to report anything that looks dangerous, and we will certainly do our best to try and get there as quickly as possible. But we will not be able to respond to all of the slides, or all of the flooding, all of the challenges immediately. So we ask you to bear this in mind. Those are my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your updates and for sharing with us on building our resilience, and of course reminding us that we need to improve our practices, whether it is the way we dump, the way we build, and how we dispose our waste as well. So thank you to all our presenters this morning. We now open the floor for questions. I know, Linda, your hand has been up for a little while. I think you had a question for Nawasa. So we'll take your questions at this time, and then we'll wrap up for this morning. Linda, you may proceed with your question. Rena has a question as well. And thank you so much for joining us, Rena. Rena is in the building this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Linda, you may proceed with your question. While we wait for Linda, we could have Rena. You may go ahead.
I have a question for everybody.
Okay.
That's okay, right? Prime Minister, I'll start with you. Is the CRIF policy going to be triggered due to the conditions we're experiencing now? If not, are we going to be looking for additional coverage in this?
I can't answer whether it will be covered because it's a parametric insurance. So there's certain, for example, on the rainfall side, once a certain, if the parameters are the quantity of rainfall within a particular duration, if it meets that, then it's triggered. So I can't at this stage say. The team at the Ministry of Finance, based on the data that comes from the Meteorological Office and from NAWASA in particular, they would be able to tell us. You'll appreciate that at the Met Office, the rainfall is always less than, say, at NAWASA's site. So that is something we will have to factor in as well. And it's ongoing, so obviously I'm hoping, honestly, that we don't experience any more rainfall because I'm not so sure that the soil can take any more of it. And clearly, as we can see from the high tide and the agitated seas, if more rainfall happens, we'll have a lot more significant damage. So at this stage, I can't say whether we can look for additional insurance. I can certainly say we have to do everything that we can to build further financial resilience into addressing this. So it is something that I think we are going to have to look at.
Okay. I don't know if it's between you or Minister Williams, but any of you can answer the other two questions relating to infrastructure. The River Road project, an update on that. We see what is happening to River Road, the impact. What is happening with that project?
Right, so I can update you on it, but also, if necessary, the Chief Technical Officer could provide some additional details in terms of what is required. There were essentially three remaining main aspects of the project. The two bridges, which is the Humpback Bridge and the bridge located to Steele's Auto Supplies, which have to be constructed anew, and then the entire road was required to be paved. I'll be honest with you, in light of what I've seen, I don't know that merely having two new bridges and repaving the road is going to address the flooding that we're facing at River Road. And I don't know that building a 200-foot wall or 10-foot wall will address it. So it's clear from where I sit that I think we are going to have to get a flood mitigation expert to review all of this and to provide further guidance. Obviously, the river you can see. I even had someone sending me a text message saying, well, as long as the river and the sea are at the same level, then the water is always going to flow back into the settlement. So that is sort of, in a broad sense, what the outstanding aspects of it are. But I can have the Chief Technical Officer provide some additional, more technical details in terms of the actual packets of the work and where we are in terms of getting the bridges and so on dealt with.
So, good morning again, everyone. So, essentially, as Prime Minister would have indicated, we have 3 outstanding packages to be done. We would have done some revisions in terms of the proposed design, but now, given the volume of rainfall that we've experienced, we may have to, in a second phase to these final packages, do some additional work upstream of the river. Persons in the area would have mentioned that the river would have actually started entering the road from where the walls would have ended, which is on the upstream end of the work to be done. Part of the contributing factors to the things that we've seen is further upstream within the river's catchment. Because we have more impervious surfaces being constructed, everybody has a paved driveway. They have their downspouts being positioned into the roadside drains and to the rivers as well. So that also increases the volume of the water that we experience coming downstream in St. John's River. The river that goes to St. John's River and empties out by the stadium basically comes from areas above Bolio, Boca, and makes its way down into the channel. So our proposed designs in the river has to be mindful of all of these things. The intended plan, especially closest to the stadium, is to create a new humpback bridge. The current design of the existing humpback bridge, because it is lower, close to the edge of the road, it becomes blocked with bamboo and other pieces of logs and debris, and that also now creates a hydraulic jump in the river that forces the water out to the sides into the stadium. So essentially, until we can seal up all of the spaces in the river that the water would exit through, we are likely to experience similar issues. So within the ministry now, our current plan is to attack the construction of these bridges in the dry season coming up. If we do have a dry season, and as Mr. Walters would say, the climatic conditions are likely to be crazy. So ideally, if we do have a proper dry season, we will be cracking off with some work in the river to construct the bridges and complete the project. So at least we should be able to realize some of the benefits we experience.
Okay, while you have the mic, just to clarify what you told us today, where are we at now when it comes to the cleanup of the slides? You didn't really particularly say where we at now with the cleanup of the slides for this morning from last night, and from preliminary assessment over this morning and last night. Give us an estimated number of slides. You talk about the last 10 days, but yeah.
Right. So the number is rapidly changing. So in the last 10 days, we had something close to 50, in excess of 50. As fast as the reports are coming in, there are also some slides that we may not have gotten to due to the rains over the weekend that we are now trying to get to. We have cleaned up most of the slides over the last 10 days, particularly those large ones like in St. David's and so on.
What about this morning?
So this morning, the crews are out again identifying the areas. We have some heavy equipment already mobilized, dealing with the cleanup of the slides as well. In some areas, we have had massive quantities of soil moving. We have some initial drone measurements from Willis, for example, where we had an area that was in excess of 10 meters high sliding, right? So to put it in perspective, that is, 30 feet. So that's like a 2 or 3 story building basically coming off the hillside. So it has been challenging cleaning up some of these slides because the sheer volume of material that needs to be moved is just so fast that the equipment can get to.
All right. sit with you. Nawasa, since you're on this end, my question to you is, any thoughts on how Nawasa can strengthen the system? I know that you cannot beat the Mother Nature and the impact that they have, but any thoughts on how you can strengthen the system and lessen the damage experienced over the past few days?
I think that is an excellent question. At Nawasa, in the recent past, we have been advocating for Grenada as a country, the water sector, and Nawasa as the water authority, investing in improved watershed management. And there is no alternative, there's no other way we can approach the problem. Over the years, and it's becoming more and more frequent, when we have extreme rainfall events, there is soil erosion, soil, silt, sand, small stones, medium-sized stones, boulders, trees, bamboo come down and block our dams. We put our heads down, we do damage assessment, we send out crews, we spend scores of thousands of dollars clearing dams, fixing pipelines, clearing access to dams and so on, only to have it, as has happened this year, repeated a few weeks or a few months later. We cannot continue. I've been saying now that the extreme rainfall events and others, Met and NADMA and so on, can verify. This is going to be the new normal. This is not a 1 in 10 year event. This is going to be the new normal. So we need to be strategic in our approach. So what is the improved watershed management that we're talking about? We often use the analogy of a watershed, think of a sponge, that if you throw a jug or a glass of water on it, it soaks up the water and so. And if you put it down on your kitchen counter, you come back next day, you will see little rivulets, little bits of water, little droplets of water still being emitted from that sponge. The analogy of that is to a watershed. The soil in the watershed is analogous to the sponge. When rain falls, the trees and vegetation use some of that rain, evapotranspiration. Some of the rain is evaporated and goes into the atmosphere. A certain proportion of it infiltrates into the soil, and a significant proportion of it now, because of the degraded condition of our watersheds over many decades, a large percentage of the water impacting on a watershed runs off, a stormwater runoff, carrying the soil with it, leading to the blockage of dams, as we have reported. When you improve the quality, when you implement projects that improve the quality of your watershed, you are assisting that watershed to retain a greater proportion of the rain that falls on the watershed, like the sponge. You're soaking up more of the water through infiltration. And the factors, there are many. It is fairly complex. It's not an easy idea to convey, but think of it as based on the slope, the topography, the vegetative cover, whether there is properly covered by forest trees. And so we're talking about in the interior of Grenada, where most of our dams and intakes are. When you take these actions, slope stabilization measures, you will be improving the quality of the watershed. You'll be improving the quality of the soil to retain water. And when it's not raining, so in the start and well into the dry season, the watershed, the soil, would continue to release that water. It's referred to, the technical name is base flow. So you will have a better base flow longer into the dry periods. I often pose the question, if anybody can answer it, how many trees have we in Grenada replanted since Hurricane Ivan 20 years ago? It's a rhetorical question. What are we doing about it? Quite fortuitously, we at NAWASA, we hosted just over a month ago a delegation from the CARICOM Development Fund, the CDF. And they came and they asked us, well, how can CDF partner with you in the water sector to increase the resilience of your water systems? And we gave them a rundown of what we're doing with the G-Cruise project that has to be finished at the end of 2025. We gave them an overview of the, the UK SIF project that is now underway, that has to be done in 2025. We spoke about the government allocating about $25 million to the sewerage sector under the Saudi fund, which is going to be building a sewage treatment plant for the Grandland system and one for the St. George's system, and extending the Grandland sewage system into Lansapine, or most of Lansapine. So we gave them this overview, and then we said, you know what? Would you be prepared to partner with us for a watershed management project? And they were very excited. They jumped at the idea, and they said, we will provide you within a month with a concept document that outlines the parameters of such a project. Well, I received that document from CDF yesterday, day before yesterday. And I will be submitting it to NAWASA's board of directors that meets next week, Thursday. It is likely to be, the initial project is likely to be a $10 million project. The CDF are accredited to the Green Climate Fund. So we're talking about the preparation of a project that's likely to be, it's a multi-million $ project. It's likely to be implemented over multiple years, of the order of $10 million for this first project, for addressing a number of measures to improve our most at-risk watersheds. We won't, for $10 million, be able to address all of the almost 30 watersheds that NAWASA uses, but might be able to do 12 or 14 or 16 or 18 of them, the most critical at-risk watersheds. And so this is the way forward. I can't go into any further detail now because it's early days yet. But I just want to make the point that we in Grenada, and particularly in the water sector, we need to do something different to what we have been doing over the years. We must address, we're grappling with the impacts of global climate change. These extreme rainfall events are going to be the new normal, so we have to do something different. We are embarking on that, and as the project is developed, we'll be doing the necessary, public communication and so forth. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I think you were very clear. Thank you for that. Rena, do you have a final question, or can we move on?
Just to Minister Williams, you spoke about the national cleanup. This is my final question. Many have been saying that one of the issues is drainage and stuff around the country when it comes to the water filtrating out and illustrating towards the road gangs over the years who used to do that. They're no longer there as usual. Could you speak to that, and if that is something that is being considered rather than waiting for such an incident to happen and then we have to do a national cleanup, the maintenance?
I'll respond to that and answer situation.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the premise of the question I don't think is factually accurate. The Ministry of Infrastructure maintains permanent crews of environmental wardens who throughout all of the districts are primarily responsible for cleaning drains and cleaning culverts, and that's an ongoing issue, as an ongoing, even currently right now. And in addition to that, from time to time you have persons who are engaged in the debushing, and that is ongoing as we speak. I think we have to be real with ourselves and not believe things that we imagine. The environmental wardens are not going to stop the kind of flooding and the kind of destruction that we're seeing when we get the kind of rainfall that we get and we face the kind of challenges that we face. And Mr. Smith talked about the state of the forest and the state of the hillside, and whether or not, for example, we replanted in a systematic way, any of our vegetation since Hurricane Ivan, and he's talked about our watershed management system. I've talked about our practices in terms of the cutting of bamboos and large trees and leaving it in rivers and so on. And what happens? Mr. Blash has talked about the fact that everywhere we are building more and more concrete homes, and therefore the water has to go somewhere. We also have to accept that we are building in flood-prone areas. Right? I mean, I don't think there's any imagination that River Road is a flood-prone area because the St. John's River runs through it, and it's basically part of it is flat, and then you have the hillside surrounding it. So, since I've known myself as a child, and I think probably since Green has existed, River Road always floods. The question is it getting better or worse might be the issue. The Monrouge area, some of those areas are actually reclaimed land. It floods all the time. It probably is getting worse because of the erratic nature of the rainfall, and because in many instances we have more and more construction taking place in areas that were either previously agricultural or had a lot more vegetation. So yes, insofar as everything needs to work together and everyone has to contribute towards minimizing the impacts of what we're going through. Keeping our culverts clear, keeping our drains clear will certainly contribute, but the reality is with the level of rainfall that you experience, and in a year where you've had a hurricane, in a year where you've had a drought, which would have meant that the vegetation and so on would have been laid bare, and at the pace at which the water is running off now, there's very little that maintaining drains and so on can do. Most of the landslides have nothing to do with drains. Most of the damage that is happening is landsliding, which probably has to do with the fact that you either have too heavy vegetation or not enough vegetation, and so the water is soaking into the soil and therefore causing the soil to move dramatically. And in many instances for the homes and so on, the homes are being built on the hillside that is unstable. So I don't think as I said, first, the environmental wardens are there, and in fact, their primary responsibility is to clean the drains and culverts and so on across the nation, and that is ongoing. But given the kind of damage we're seeing and the kind of flooding and the level of rainfall that we're experiencing, I think we have to do a lot more if we are going to be able to address mitigating some of the consequences of the floods and the heavy rainfalls. I don't know whether the Chief Technical Officer wants to add any particular information in terms of specific to the operations of the environmental wardens in that regard.
Right. No, I think the Prime Minister's comments were all-encompassing. But maybe I could just double down on the fact that the volume of rainfall we have been receiving is almost... The volume of rainfall that we have been receiving is more than you could possibly design for. What also happens to some of the retaining walls that we would have seen that would have, caved in is as a result of, poor construction practices. So really and truly, to respond to some of these things that we are facing is more of an all-encompassing thing. It's a mixture of, the public, government, and as the climate crisis continues to crack on, we are likely to be facing with these issues every now and again. The volume of rainfall, a lot of the hillsides just literally could not keep up with that kind of volume. It's just so much water that could have soaked in when the aquifers and so on are filled up. It really just starts to make the soil particles buoyant. They lose their frictional interaction with each other, and then you start having movement. Some of the slides, you might actually see them happening even after the rain stops falling, because different parts of the hillside actually starts losing its resisting capacity at different times. So in essence, when the rain is falling, you might say, oh, well, it's so strange, these things just end up sliding and it's not raining, but that is because we are too far down a rabbit hole to actually stop it. So at least progressively what the ministry would try to do is in areas where we have cleaned up slides 2-3 times this year, and historically, we would try to address them with a more holistic plan. But it is a combined effort from ourselves as well as the public to assist us in keeping the roadway safe and free for all of the users.
Thank you, Rena, and thank you for the responses. We now hear from Linda Straker. You have a question?
Good morning. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you now. Good afternoon.
Okay. Well, this was probably my third or fourth attempt. I'm glad that we have made contact.
Yes, thank you.
I have quite a few questions, but my first question is to the gentleman from Nawassa. Since the rain started falling on the 8th of November, we would have seen Nawassa send up multiple releases. Can you tell us the cost to Nawassa for doing those repairs, which seems to be repair, and whether or not Nawassa would have had to hire seasonal or temporary workers to bring the system back into distribution? That's the first question.
Yes, Ms. Straker, I can answer that for you very easily because I gave the answer earlier. We estimate, a preliminary estimate of the damage from the last 10 days is of the order of 880,000 EC dollars. And I did indicate that we have had to hire additional labor, charge hands as we call them, to repair dams that we repaired after Hurricane Beryl, and there's some dams that are being cleared for the fourth time right now. So the answer, it's just about 0.8 million and just about 0.9 million. And yes, we have had to hire extensively additional labor.
Thank you. My other question is, I heard Minister Andy Williams spoke about the national cleanup and what it would involve. Can he, or I don't know if the Prime Minister would want to chime in here, said what is actually the cost to the state for that cleanup, and where is the money will be coming from? I know we would have had a supplementary budget. Is there any project that was approved in that supplementary budget will now have to wait and the money be reallocated?
Well, first of all, we don't know the cost as yet. And we have the Greater Solid Waste who would assist in the cleanup. We have infrastructure too. And we have space in our budget for that. Even the Ministry of MIT has space in its budget for that also. And if you remember, we have done national cleanup in the past around Independence time. And it is needed at this time because even in addition to the various factors that may contribute to the flooding and so, sometimes even we as people, we do not take care in cleaning our surroundings, and we need to do that. So it's a national effort that is needed at this moment, and we have space in our budget for that. The cost normally is not enormous, but we want to encourage people who are in the different communities to come out and lend a hand, because at the end of the day, Grenada belongs to all of us, and we have to take pride in our country. And everything is not just about money, but also about community initiative and national pride. And I'm saying this is a cry for everyone to come out and help in whatever way that they can. So as the Ministry of Mobilization, we are mobilizing people. We are mobilizing resources also in terms of equipment. And we want to at least to make a difference, so that if we cannot control the rain, but if it comes, at least we can be more prepared than we were. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Minister, for your response.
I do have another question for Mr. Walters.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, my question is to Mr. Walters. Now, SR 40 of 2023, which was passed in October, commenced the new NAGMA Act, the Disaster Management Act, which makes NAGMA into a statutory body. Can Mr. Walters tell us who are the members of his board? What was the budget given to NAGMA in the 2024 budget? And my final question is to the Prime Minister. Is he satisfied with the response NAGMA has given to the nation since the November 8 rain?
Thank you, Ms. Straker. I'll answer the question in relation to the statutorization of NADMA, because that's really not for Mr. Walters per se, but for the government of Grenada. So yes, the legislation was enacted. NADMA was not given a budget in the 2024 budget, because although the legislation was enacted, the actual operationalizing of NADMA into a statutory body has not in fact commenced. We are hoping to do so in the 2025 budget cycle, so there is no board NADMA as we speak now. And if you would recall and that should have been probably self-evident from our experience at Hurricane Beryl, because what we would have had was a National Emergency Advisory Council, which was the sort of policy framework set up pre the enacting of the legislation to turn NADMA into a statutory body. And so that's the framework in terms of practical operationalizing of NADMA that has occurred. It is still operating as a department of the Ministry of National Disaster in conjunction with the wider National Emergency Advisory Council, which is a representative body of almost every sector in Grenada, from power to water to airports to port to infrastructure to health, which was the process by which we managed Hurricane Beryl. Given that NADMA story itself has no separate budget and has no separate board as yet, its ability to treat with disaster response at this point in time is to some extent quite limited, and it must depend to a large extent on the entire government and the entire public to be able to operationalize responses to disasters of all kinds. What NADMA has been doing, I'm saying NOASA a lot because I guess NOASA has dominated the conversation. What NADMA has been focused on primarily is making sure that from an education and a pre-briefing and a notification perspective, that it does everything to inform the public of impending climatic conditions once it is advised by the Meteorological Office, and the necessary actions and steps that are required to be able to do so. I certainly think NADMA's handling and response of Hurricane Beryl in all of the circumstances and given the limitations I've just identified was, in my view, quite excellent. Of course, there are areas that, as it moves into a statutory body, we will have to significantly address. In terms of this particular response, I certainly have heard the criticisms as to whether or not NADMA could not have given a clearer warning as to the possibility of the flash floods and the amount of rainfall. In hindsight, we can perhaps say yes, but the truth about rainfall in particular, it's always highly unpredictable. And we've had experiences where the sun is shining hot in St. George's and St. Patrick is being washed out. So it's not always easy to be able to predict with certainty how the weather will behave. I would probably say that from a information perspective, that we would obviously review the internal approach to how we disseminate and to the extent to which we scale up to say this is urgent or not urgent. But we also have to appreciate that when we tell people no school, or we say there's going to be flash flooding and it doesn't happen, then people turn around and criticize and say you shut down the country, or you do this, or you make everybody run scared, and then nothing happens. So it's always a balancing act. So there's no question that I think on the communication side, we will have to relook how we communicate and to make sure that we use all available tools, including our telecoms providers or radio stations, social media and so on, to make sure that we can hopefully be as accurate as the Meteorological Office would allow us to be in terms of giving warnings of possible adverse weather conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Prime Minister, and thank you, Linda, for the question. I do have a question from Ms. Paul. You may proceed, and then we will wrap up for today.
Thank you very much, Neela. Good, hello, everyone. This question is for the Honorable Prime Minister. We have seen the devastating impact of the flooding and the landslides, particularly in your constituency, St. David. Can you speak to some preliminary assessments in terms of how many families have been affected, homes flooding out or destroyed by the slides, and in terms of immediate assistance being considered for these individuals?
All right, thank you. We have a report of at least, we believe, 29 slides so far and counting. We have reports of at least 3 homes that have been completely destroyed. I visited 2 of them last night, one in Mount Agnes, one in Rucane, and we think we have one that is significantly compromised as well in the Mount Tranquil area, and we are having other reports of flooding or water damage to other households, and that's ongoing. There are some businesses, so for example, the water bottling business in Lassages has been completely and utterly devastated by the flooding. We suspect that the damage will be extensive to all of the equipment and so on. And again, the business is in fact located in a low-lying area. We have significant compromise to some of the road infrastructure, particularly in the Las Vegas area, for example. You could just drive and see that. So what we have been doing in terms of persons who've been impacted is through social community development and housing, is looking to get alternative housing for them, for example, at the current affordable housing site, which was graciously built by the government and people of China, as well as mobilizing to provide them with things like clothing if they needed, food, etc. This is ongoing. In some instances, family members have taken some of them in, but the team is out working seriously to be able to respond. I can't give you a definitive number at this stage as to the total numbers, but at least 3 households have essentially lost their homes.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ms. Paul, you have another question? If so, you may go ahead, and then we will wrap up.
Okay. In COP29 in Azerbaijan, what are some of the positives coming out of your engagements? Sorry, this question is for the Prime Minister. Coming out of your engagements for Grenada and other small island developing states, given the gravity of the flash flooding experience in the recent days, in terms of your capacity as CARICOM chairman, can you speak also to the reaction of the international community to what transpired here while this important meeting was taking place? Thank you very much.
I mean, it was sadly timely, but sad nonetheless, because I don't want to be reporting as I was at the podium speaking in COP, that I was seeing pictures of my own son standing on top of his desk as a result of the flooding at Tam CC. But I think it brought home graphically to the international community that this is not a joke. We're not, coming to COP because we want to or because we think it's a trip that is fun, and that we are really there to advocate for fairness in the climatic financing system to address the significant challenges that we are dealing with. So, when you go to COP, leaders are given 3 minutes to speak. And in the 2.5 minutes I had, because half of it is taken with simply thanking the host for undertaking to host such a significant event, we were very direct that we are asking for partnership, and that is financial partnership to treat with the challenges that we face as a result of the climatic events. We've talked specifically about the loss and damage fund, that fund should be properly funded and that it should be available for us to respond to the obvious loss and damage in Grenada's case that we are facing as a result of the climatic events. But we have to appreciate these things take an enormous amount of willpower, an enormous amount of advocacy and stick-to-itiveness to get the big countries, the G20 countries, the major polluters and emitters to in fact fund in a transparent and easily accessible manner. Oftentimes the funds are pledged, but they're pledged in very sophisticated, complex funding agencies that are located in, for example, the Green Climate Fund South Korea, or in Europe or in North America, and you don't get the opportunity to have, in a sense, direct access. You have to be accredited. The procurement process for projects take a long time. There's no project when you suffer loss and damage. If the road is washed away because of the water or the rainfall, that's not a project. That's money simply to build back the road and to mitigate the challenges. So we are hoping, coming out of COP, that there are larger pledges and, more importantly, actual funding of the loss and damage fund, and that the rules pertaining to how monies will be disbursed will be directly based on a compensatory basis for small island developing states that have suffered loss and damage. But we also use the opportunity to engage in bilateral conversations with our partners, for example, China, to be able to impress upon them that outside of the multilateral system, that at a bilateral level, they can also provide assistance to small island developing states to address issues like energy transition, which we need to do things like have energy security, which is part and parcel of this entire climatic, which is really, in a sense, the cause of the exacerbated climatic conditions we have with the amount of carbon that is being emitted. Azerbaijan as a host was also very supportive of the small island developing states in things like food security. While I was there, I visited a greenhouse owned by private investors, but who are very keen and interested in Grenada. I've already been to Grenada and made proposals to the Ministry of Agriculture as to how they can assist us in bringing their investment, their technology into addressing food security here. And I stress this because, for example, the methodology of, for example, growing tomatoes on the ground right now, if you're in a low-lying area, with the kind of water and flooding that you've had, your entire crop will be destroyed. But with greenhouses, you can actually elevate off the ground the growing of the tomatoes. So you, in fact, stand a much more significant chance that you would probably need significant flooding to even reach the level at which the small plots of land, which in many instances is no larger than a shoebox, that the tomatoes are grown out of, and that produces hundreds of thousands of tomatoes in a 6 to 12 week period. So bringing technology, sustainability, and resilience to our farming is going to be critical to address our food security, because as you can see, for a lot of the farmers on the West Coast or in the low-lying eastern areas, all of the crops have completely been inundated and washed out, and they have to start all over again, which means if we were depending on that tomato or corn or what have you to eat, there's no food. Which means you have to go back and import, and then if you have to import, then the containers have to take forever to come from wherever they're coming, and that vicious cycle continues. So our food security is a major issue that we have to also address, and therefore we need partners who have the technology, the know-how, and are willing to share that with us, so that we can also address this issue of food security, which has been exacerbated by the terrible weather conditions that we've had. But these issues are not one-off issues. You don't go to one meeting and then they give you the money. You have to constantly stay at it. You have to follow up. You have to write your projects. You have to have teams that will call and hound, frankly, and make sure that your name is on the table to get the kind of results that you want. And as small island developing states, that's our reality. And essentially, that is why we try and stick together as small island developing states, so that we can have greater impact and greater voting power within the multilateral space when we are negotiating on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. We are at the end of our press conference, and I'd like to invite the members of the panel, as I like to call you, to make any closing remarks. Dr. Walters?
All right, thank you very much. And just to remind the public again that the Meteorological Office is advising that we can anticipate additional rainfall later into this evening and in the next few days. So given the circumstances, the current circumstances, with the ground being waterlogged, we can anticipate more flooding, more landslides if the weather conditions persist. So we urge residents to pay attention to the information that we will give from the Met Office, from NADMA, and from the other entities. Pay attention to the information so that you can make decisions, so that you can probably save a life, or you can prevent damage to your property. Again, please pay attention to the information.
Minister Williams, you want to remind us of the numbers to call and the cleanup campaign, if the weather permits?
So let me just say again the numbers to call. It's 449-6183 and 417-7091, and that is to report any damages, landslides, fallen trees, so that we can act speedily to resolve the issues. In addition, on weekend we want to do a national cleanup. And again, you can contact the same numbers if your community needs assistance in any way. And lastly, I just want to reach out to my constituents. I have seen some of the footages of damages that was done in the Woodlands area, the Cafe area, the Clarkscourt area. And immediately after this press conference, I will be going to see exactly what we can do to assist. I have members of my team in my parliamentary office out on the ground and going to the various areas so that they can meet with the people to see what was some of the damages that they sustained. And from a parliamentary standpoint, we will be doing our best to assist the folks who were really adversely affected. And lastly, I just want to ask personnel or people, if you're living in a low-lying area, to, especially if you have vehicles and so, but to park them at a higher point so that they will not be affected by the rainfall. Because we cannot predict the weather, but we can take measures to ensure that the damaging effects of it is not as much. So in this time, we have to use wisdom and also to take precautionary measures to really combat with the adverse climate conditions that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Prime Minister.
Sure, thank you. Well, first, let me thank all of the colleagues, both the reporters who joined us and asked questions today, listeners and viewers online, the team from NOASA who are here with us for giving us the very clear and succinct summary of the responses of NOASA to the challenges faced, as well as the more medium to long-term issues we need to address, both our water management and the impact offshore, as well as the Chief Technical Officer and Dr. Walters from NADMA. I wish to advise the public that I'm traveling this afternoon to the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. As Chairman of CARICOM, we are hosting the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, for the CARICOM India Summit, which will take place tomorrow, the 20th of November. This is it's only the second time that we're having a CARICOM India Summit, and in light of the challenges we are facing here in the region with climatic conditions, and I want to point out it's not just Grenada. St. Vincent again has been impacted by this weather pattern. Belize has had significant flooding as a result. Also, that we need the support of our international partners to be able to help us in whatever way they can in addressing some of those issues. But there are a number of areas and agreements that we expect to sign with India. As you know, it's essentially overtaking China as the most populous country. It has one of the fastest growing economy, and we've had a long and cordial fraternal relations with India. So we'll be hosting Prime Minister Modi in Guyana, and as Chairman of CARICOM, I would be co-chairing the meeting with Prime Minister Modi. In my absence, the Honorable Andy Williams will act as Prime Minister. I am expected to be back in Grenada, weather permitting and all things being equal, either Friday night or Saturday morning. I will be accompanied by the Honorable Joseph Handel, Minister for Foreign Affairs, and other members from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I want to reiterate, though, that we are all in this together. I want to make sure that we prioritize our safety, and particularly the safety of vulnerable citizens, our elderly, and our children. We really want us to be patient and exercise caution. If you're in a position that's dry or where there's no danger to you, if it means spending a couple more hours there to let the water that's in the road or the slide to be cleared, let us please allow that to happen first before risking our lives and risking the lives of others simply to try and move from one place to the other, especially if you're not in a place of danger. Of course, if you're in a place of danger, then the exception is understood. But in light of the fact that we have the Met Office, we have NADMA there, if you know that you reside in an area that's low-lying, if you are also residing in an area that is prone to sliding, or if you see slides have been happening, we will urge you, if you have a friend, if you have a neighbor who would be willing to take you in, particularly at night, if the projection is for heavy rainfall, we'd ask you to exercise caution and be able to put your own life and the safety of yourself and others first. And I also want us to exercise patience. As the Chief Technical Officer has pointed out, there's upward of 50 plus slides and counting. St. David alone has 29. Right here where we are at the ministerial complex, there's been extensive flooding, and in fact I could not even drive into the car park. I had to walk because there are workmen right now trying to clear the slides and clear the drains. The National Stadium has been inundated. The fire services have had to use an enormous amount of water to try and save the track. And the reality, just as how NOASA clears the dam and then has to clear it again, there's a high probability that if the flooding continues, we will have to keep trying to wash this track down to save it. It costs millions to do, and obviously we are trying to save it, but it also means we are spending and using millions of gallons of water that we probably don't have just to do so. Even the roadways, we've had to ask the fire services to try and wash mud off the roadways in some areas where there's so much mud that vehicles are actually skidding and running off. Hence the reason why we want the public again to exercise caution. If you don't need to go somewhere for now, stay at home or stay in your workplace unless and until you have to do so. We need to continue exercising vigilance. We need to continue being our brother's keeper. But above all, we're alive. And if we're alive, there's hope. And we need to be mindful of that. We need to rally around each other, rally around the country, and be supportive of those who are out there trying to ensure that they keep the roads clear, keep the drains clear, and move the slides and so on. So when you see the heavy equipment operators on the road, don't hassle them, don't be impatient with them. In fact, you should be giving them a thumbs up and saying good job. And we obviously want to encourage them to continue doing so. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for your updates, and to all of you for joining us this morning. I just want to add, Prime Minister, if you will allow, Honorable Karine James, Minister for Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy. She is still in COP29. Her and her team, they're doing a fantastic fantastic job in fighting for us and fighting for climate justice. And when they return, they will do an extensive report, and we will engage the media again with updates and reports from the engagement in COP29. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us for our press conference today. We've heard updates from NAWASA, the Ministry of Infrastructure, NADMA, and of course from our Honorable Prime Minister. We again wish to remind you to prioritize your safety, don't drive or walk through flooded areas, and we ask that you report all slides to the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation. So once again, have a great day, everybody, and stay safe. This is an update from the Ministry of Information. I am Neela Etienne, Press Secretary, Prime Minister's Office. Thank you again.